How's it going, guys? It's your boy, Lieutenant Dan here, live from Orlando, Florida. Good to see everybody starting to kind of file in on the chat. It's been a minute since I've actually popped up with some stuff. Make sure you guys hit that like button, that notification bell. Ring it. Ring that notification bell. Make sure that you are notified of all our content that comes out when it comes out. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure you go into the comments and the live chat that we currently have going on right now and tell us what is up and say hi. We'd love to hear from you guys in the chat. Let me know if the sound quality is fine. For all of you that are currently just joining, mods, I hope everything's good. All right, yeah, that's not sounding too bad. I think it's about time to have the ultimate conversation about Desmond Ridder. And that's kind of the show that I wanted to have today. I wanted to be able to have kind of just a off-the-wall discussion about Desmond Ridder. And we can, you can have your discussion however you want it. And you can eat your cake however you want it. But at the end of the day, when we talk about whether it be Desmond Ridder or Cordero Patterson or Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson, or Arthur Smith, Terry Fontenot, Arthur Blank, no matter who it is that's, kind of part of the Atlanta Falcons organization, you do it with evidence and clarity, understanding that no matter who you're talking about, that you are there to figure out all the information, data, collect it, and then have a final consensus at the end, beginning, a middle, and end. And I think it's been talked to and talked about to death as far as the Ridder situation is concerned by the media and by, all of these other corps and things of that nature. These lettered networks, these supposed, overlords of NFL and sports media. But before we get into that and before we get into a whole long, deep discussion, I want to say hi to everybody that is currently popping into the chat. Make sure you guys share this out on Twitter. Hit that like button and that retweet to share that out to all your friends and family. Make sure that you also share this out on the Falcons forums or your Reddits or wherever it may be. And if you definitely want to say hi in the chat, by all means, I would love to be able to have back and forth conversation with everybody in here. I promise I don't bite. So hello to everyone who is currently joining right now. Philip Bonner, what's going on, my man? Rise up, stay grounded. What's up, Lieutenant Dan? Rise up, stay grounded, my guy. Hope all is well with you and the wife. We are doing a lot better than we were. What do we got for today? All kinds of things, man. Chris Edwards in the building. Rose Staxon, Raymond Elder in the building. And as everybody starts to file in and say hi and hello to everybody, I hope everybody's doing well. So let's get into this. Desmond Ridder discussion, and something that I think that I wanted to sit back and really get into the nitty gritty of, because I know everybody has their own particular opinions. But I was just on twitch.tv/gamingwith_LTDan. And I had a little kind of a rant that made me go, you know what? I really need to use this for a show. So let's just stop everything. Let's go, run around the house and do some chores, and let's sit back down and just literally re-listen to what I have currently set together, and then deliver that in a precise and set up format for you guys. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to replicate or do what I'm currently doing here. Christopher Sanders, what's going on, my man? Rise up, stay grounded. I hope you're doing well. But what ended up getting me earlier this morning, and what I kind of want to repeat to some degree in this particular episode of the podcast, is that I've heard the discussion back and forth, and I don't know where everybody in the chat is currently setting themselves up, but I have already heard in the chat, and within the media and with the Falcons fans, I've heard the anti-Desmond Ridder or sheepish Desmond Ridder stock and groups begin to have their discussion and come to a consensus about wait and see on Desmond Ridder. And when putting that together as a whole, as a group, I think we come to two main parts that everybody begins to skip over. And those main parts are that the Falcons attempted to and decided to, on their own terms, attempted to go after premier quarterbacks and decided to get out of the premier quarterback market. But the narrative is that they just didn't put a strong enough push to that. And the other of the two takes that I continue to hear is that the Atlanta Falcons had a QB battle between Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder in order to determine who their quarterback was going to be going forward, and Marcus Mariota being the dumb doof that he was on the field at the time. And I'm not speaking ill of Marcus Mariota, but the play is there, the tape is there, the season happened, those things happened, those dumb plays happened, so we call them for what they are, is boneheaded plays. And Desmond Ridder was out for 13 games until Marcus Mariota ended up playing himself out of that position. And Desmond Ridder ended up playing into that position for 4 games and went 2-2 and was able to put touchdowns on the board. So what we end up getting here is the media perception or the fandom perception heard by the media, heard from the media, absorbed from the media, that Desmond Ridder was not capable of beating Marcus Mariota in a QB competition to be able to get more reps in game time. And on top of that, the Atlanta Falcons have no attachment whatsoever to Desmond Ridder as they have gone after Lamar Jackson and after Deshaun Watson. And therefore, putting their hat into those rings would make it so that the Atlanta Falcons were never interested in keeping a Desmond Ridder 3rd round draft pick. So now let's step into the realm of actual reality when it comes to these things. The media perception and the fan perception currently of Desmond Ridder is that of a negative or sheepish disposition. And the Atlanta Falcons are all in on Desmond Ridder, and the media can't understand why. And continues to go back to the Lamar Jackson would have been a great fit for Atlanta because the narrative provides an answer in that Arthur Smith obviously had Marcus Mariota and Tannehill. And the Atlanta Falcons are the most famous for their Michael Vick discussion, which we'll get into another little off-branching discussion off of that, but the media fell in love with that. Someone who is very polarizing, someone who brings a certain swagger to an organization. You don't get many of guys like that. It's either very professional or overly goofy that doesn't make it. Too much emotion or too little. And that picture being painted in a system where the Atlanta Falcons specifically ran the ball heavily is the only particular reason why the Atlanta Falcons, on top of the Michael Vick discussion, and we will get to that in just a moment, but the only reason why the Lamar Jackson conversation is even in hand is because of the way the Falcons ran the system under Marcus Mariota and not under Matt Ryan, that Lamar Jackson would be the perfect fit for the offense that is currently happening, when at the end of the day, that style of offense is a training wheels offense, limited and shaped and conformed to Marcus Mariota's capable abilities and incapabilities. Where Marcus Mariota is in a average to below average passing quarterback with an average to above average running style, and thus you create an offense around that. Whereas the 4 games, and that's 13 games worth of work there, where they use the run to make the pass game work, but no one was scared of the passes because that particular quarterback isn't going to make you afraid. It isn't going to make you move the needle as a team. No one, and this is something that is fundamental to all NFL teams, is that the league started on the run, and then the pass became the exotic necessity that vaulted the league into the current iteration that we have. Passing offenses do not negate the ability to run. It only creates more things to defend. Because at the end of the day, you can have an all-running team, an all-running game plan, but you will receive a ridiculous amount of opposition because there was another style of play created to create not only variance, but also create mismatches, because passing and catching and receiving and defending receivers are all brand new positions technically. So the run game will never be something that goes out of style. It is the foundation in which the NFL was created off of rugby. But in that, now that you kind of get an idea or more focus on the training wheels and the type of offense that was put in front of Marcus Mariota to be able to operate in this offense, go back 1 year, and that was not the case under Matt Ryan, who has limitations on the opposite side of the coin and is not a runner nor a play extender. He's not a pocket presence a standard quarterback. He is of an older age and an older dynasty of the quarterback's job is to throw the ball or hand it off, and no more, no less. That does not make Matt Ryan a bad quarterback. That makes Matt Ryan probably the last of his breed, of his kind. And most likely a Hall of Famer whose statistics and values will most likely be beaten by someone in the near future. But will have to play a prolific career nonetheless to reach those accolades. And so you get these messed up perceptions and these messed up assumptions. Because in his first year, Kyle Pitts, which, by the way, leaning back on that kind of conversation, Kyle Pitts had a 1,000-yard year in his rookie year with Matt Ryan throwing the ball, but the offense didn't look like anything special. Run game was kind of working and getting there, and Matt Ryan definitely made it much easier as a transition to set up a run game, set up an offensive line, and reset the Kyle Shanahan, Arthur Smith, Mike Shanahan style of offense in Atlanta and bring it back to its original roots of Atlanta is a running team. Always has been, always will be a play-action, heavy run-oriented team. It's been like that since the early days, even with the air raid or run-and-shoot that we ran in the 1970s, 1980s. The Atlanta Falcons have always been prolific run offense. That is what they have done especially, and what they're known for from the media. Let's step into that particular realm there. Michael Vick was the polarizing piece that made Atlanta worth talking about. put up a whitewash quarterback in a Matt Ryan, and you won't get talked about by the media because there's nothing to talk about. It's the same repetitive repetition, the same averages, the same guy that's putting up good stats in a team that can't get over the hump, because to build around that is to build a certain very limited type of way. And the Falcons are now stepping into the future of what the quarterback position will be. I'm not saying Desmond Ridder is that Michael Vick-esque guy, but upon leaving their Chris Chandler era, the Atlanta Falcons picking up Michael Vick made it a priority that running the football with a quarterback creates a mismatch that cannot and will not ever in the history of the NFL going forward be underestimated or underused, because if your quarterback has wheels, you're going to say, if it's open, go for it. So in creating a specific style of offense for Matt Ryan and knowing that you're limited and not able to get your quarterback on the move like you would want to, you burnt the bridge in order to talk to Deshaun Watson, and then in that same year and same vein in which Deshaun Watson was able to get an incredible deal from the Cleveland Browns, one that the Atlanta Falcons were obviously not willing to pay. And in that own sense, by the by, even upon burning the bridge with Matt Ryan, everyone knew that Matt Ryan was only a step or more out the door before his talent could not keep up with the wear and tear on his body. And that no amount of Great Wall or superstar players around him were going to fix his arm or his ability to get the ball down the field, and we saw that with the Colts. Albeit that is a little more of a historic drop-off at the end of the day. That's more of a telltale sign of, there was many issues upon many issues there in Matt Ryan's body and Matt Ryan's ability to play. We're not able to keep up with that for multiple years after abuse of being here in Atlanta. So upon burning that bridge with Matt Ryan and kind of stepping away from the Deshaun Watson thing, going, it's 50-50. If we don't get Deshaun, cool. We drove up the price for Deshaun. But if we do get Deshaun, fantastic. We have a quarterback that we are looking to help us generate just easy, good passes, and then generate that pass and run game to create a balanced organization that we know we're going to lean on the run game as our ultimate, but our pass game will be deadly because you won't be able to stop us in that manner. You'll be too close to the line constantly and consistently. And upon losing out on those sweepstakes and going into the NFL draft and then losing out on Trey Lance, who the Falcons were 110% looking to take at 4, and ended up taking Kyle Pitts, you lead yourself into this narrative that Kyle Pitts should be a ultimate focal point of the offense after a 1,000-yard season with Matt Ryan, who literally found comfort in a tight end of Kyle Pitts' caliber and led him to looking like he was an absolute all-star. And I don't think that that's not the case. I think that Kyle Pitts is an all-star, and more or less you're going to see all-star style plays with a Desmond Ridder at the helm, but obviously not with a underwhelming passer in Marcus Mariota, who is more of a runner than a passer. It doesn't help that Kyle Pitts then gets injured that year as well. But upon losing out on Trey Lance and upon basically pissing off Matt Ryan that year going after Deshaun Watson and bringing in Marcus Mariota, who allows you to key in on your running style offense, the one, by the way, that the media has used as a narrative to be able to say that they should have gone after Lamar Jackson because of their previous memories of Michael Vick being in Atlanta. And that being the cool, hip thing to say, yes, bring that back to Atlanta, bring that same identity that you had from before, and make this exciting to talk about. I think those things led to the Atlanta Falcons saying, we're fine with 32 teams passing up on Desmond Ridder almost a baker's dozen times in a row, leading him to the third round where we will snatch a Desmond Ridder and place him behind a Marcus Mariota and say, we know your deficiencies and flaws, but the data says, and your coaches say, and the on-field discussion after watching you live says that you are a leader and someone who can do the bare minimum that we're asking to do to have a balanced offense. Because we don't want to be a primarily run-focused only team. And notice after 13 games of Marcus Mariota that 4 games of Desmond Ridder turn into pass-happy sling fests where they still ran the ball heavily. But then Desmond Ridder was out slinging the ball with Drake London. And Mikael Pruitt. Explain to me, and I'm actually going to turn off the anti-Desmond Ridder narrative for 1 second, and trying to bash on those guys and actually team up with them for just 1 second and say, explain to me how Desmond Ridder does not win a competition when he's the more balanced quarterback and the guy that you obviously want to play instead of having a Marcus Mariota whose offense is limited and not really the one that you're wanting to drive and work with. Well, that narrative created by the anti-Ridder group is not necessarily wrong, and I will not blame anyone for saying that Desmond Ridder did not beat Marcus Mariota and thus only got 4 games. I won't blame anyone for taking that particular narrative because there's no real reason or discussion that you can have that will lead you to Desmond Ridder got 4 games because they believed in Marcus Mariota. There's no debating or discussing that because there's no way in heck that is the conclusion that you come to when you know that a guy like Desmond Ridder needs as many lumps and as many times to operate out there and give you a better idea of how you want to build a team around a Desmond Ridder. Or whoever it may be, Caleb Williams in 2024, y'all. But looking at what Arthur Smith has worked with in the past, and knowing that Marcus Mariota was already benched previously for Tannehill, should automatically bring you to the conclusion that a style of offense that we have run last year for 13 games is not the actual offense that the Atlanta Falcons want to run at all. But they have found out in the moment during live field games that, this is kind of weird, but this offensive line just needs a piece or two because our running game with Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson and Caleb Huntley and now Bijan Robinson is absolutely flaming smoking hot. And this offensive line knows how to work with it. However, to look at the anti-Ridder narrative and hear anything but this particular point is ridiculous. And that point being that there is no positive and or negative, specifically speaking, about what Desmond Ridder has done or has not done that should lead you to believe that Desmond Ridder is the starter, is the guy, or is the franchise, or vice versa, is not any of those things. There is not enough evidence cultivated as a whole to say that Desmond Ridder is or is not the guy. However, there can be no denying that the arrow is pointing up. And if that is not enough for you as a listener, as a media member, as a Falcons fan, sitting in your barber chair, talking to your barber, and everybody sitting inside of the shop talking Falcons ball, there should be nothing in any way, shape, or form that leads you one way or another or makes you doubt in any way, shape, or form that this arrow is pointing up, and that is a good sign and a positive manner, a positive trend. And now, not having a lot of actual playing time and having the limited NFL experience may or may not have given Desmond Ridder the focus that he needs to say, this is the training level from here, and then it will begin to heighten as we continue to move forward, because you're only looking at 4 years worth of contract, and we're in year 2 now. So if Desmond Ridder doesn't do well, the Falcons are probably looking at a middling to bad team that'll be very close to a top pick in the NFL draft in 2024 with limited options in free agency to allow the Falcons to go up and go grab a guy that they want to, or receive that guy being, bad enough to be able to take him at the spot that they're selecting. And that if Desmond Ridder succeeds on the opposite side of that coin, that Desmond Ridder then potentially becomes the kind of quarterback that on a second contract, you can work something team-friendly or something that specifically works for you that allows you to keep a Desmond Ridder and say, we just need you to be Tannehill-esque style football. We don't need you to be a superstar. But the media and the fans are going to expect that because of the narrative about Kyle Pitts, about how much of a superstar he is, about 1,000-yard season, and about how he was underutilized last year in an offense that was not Pitts friendly, that was not running at 100%. So regardless of the scenarios that we come up in our head and regardless of the ones that we hear from the media, if Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot feel that this is the guy and said that this was their guy from round 1 to round 2, and when he got to round 3, they felt like striking on that you can't be mad at the Falcons passing up on Justin Fields. You can't be mad at the fact the Falcons didn't get Trey Lance. You can't be upset that the Falcons looked at Deshaun Watson like any good team should. Even with the off-the-field stuff, you're thinking business. If you allow other things to get in your way, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, I'm a firm believer of morals and values are what you build your entire foundation on, and if any of those are cracked, you're going to end up with a bad franchise and a bad organization and many years of strife and struggle. But if you're not doing your due diligence on Deshaun Watson, you're not looking for opportunities for Matt Ryan to go somewhere else because you looked at that opportunity for Deshaun Watson, you're not looking to try to go get Trey Lance, you're not looking at potentially talking to Lamar and backing out on Lamar. 2 times have the Falcons gone into the veteran pool for 2 very specific players, and both of those specific players being that their skill sets are comparable in what kind of style of quarterback that they are, and neither one of them are bad at anything that they specifically do because we haven't seen the full potential of either technically. That if you didn't do your due diligence on both of those, you would be criminally understating and underselling your entire organization and thus pulled out at the right time, noticing that you weren't going to have a chance at either. Lamar was never a chance, and Deshaun was more of a chance, but the price just wasn't there. That's a clever excuse, I think, that most pro-Ridder or pro-Matt Ryan guys and gals will utilize, and I think that's fair, actually, to say that there's no good or bad that we can say about Desmond Ridder, and the opportunities to go get quarterbacks in the draft and free agency just haven't been in the Falcons' cards. It's not fair, and when I stomp the ground and beat the table with my fists, but that doesn't change the fact that what the Atlanta Falcons have built is strategically better than what most fans have envisioned or dreamed for. I don't know of any fan that wasn't saying they wanted Jesse Bates. And the Falcons went into this offseason with the idea that they're going to win games, not that they're trying to build. But if you look at the nooks and crannies and you look at the actual filling of the cracks that were left by not only Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Deion Jones and Keanu Neal and Tack McKinley and Vic Beasley and Michael Vick and on and on and on and on and on throughout the history of Atlanta sports, the current front office has done a very good job of A, laying a foundation of run first, B, predicating their pass off their run and giving a quarterback who has a good arm and has good accuracy to deliver those throws at timely manner in a 4-game setting that has given the coaching staff enough confidence to say that we will take $7 million of our cap space, use it on Tyler Heineke just in case we were to have somebody get injured because this guy plays similar to what we're trying to do, and then allow these guys to go out and pass while completely and utterly rebuilding the defense. A 180 of what you currently had previously, taking low floor, high ceiling projects like Jeff Okudah and bringing in guys like Jesse Bates, Bud Dupree, Calais Campbell, bringing in multiple working projects that you already had and keeping them on the roster, bringing in Saints familiar, defense coordinator familiar players like Amanyata and Ellis into the fold to create a defense that is maybe one or two big men away from being very, very stout on the defensive line and very, very, very capable on the DB side of the ball of picking off anything that you throw. It's a very Saints-built defense. It's a very Saints-oriented and built defense. And I think anybody with, worth their grain of salt or with a mind of their own thought and processing can see that everything that I've said up to this point is more leaning towards the truth or in the middle of what the extremes are than anything that anybody has said up to this point. There's nothing to doubt at this point about Desmond Ridder and what kind of opportunities he was given, because if the Falcons were giving him an opportunity to compete and he didn't beat Marcus Mariota, then why did the offense change when Desmond Ridder got in there and the Falcons were able to not only win games, but look good in winning those games and begin to become more defensively connected and cohesive? Why did we not run the same similar offense that Marcus Mariota was running with Desmond Ridder? And vice versa, why did Marcus Mariota not get the freedom to run the Desmond Ridder style offense of chucking the ball where it needs to go? Because we passed more than we were passing with Desmond Ridder versus when we were passing with Marcus Mariota. Mariota was barely passing. Desmond Ridder we were probably doing more 50-50 than anything at all. So it's very interesting. The dynamic is completely open, and the opportunity for Desmond Ridder to cement himself as the guy and be able to get a contract that will keep him here for multiple years is all in Desmond Ridder's reach. All he has to do is play above average. All he has to do is lead this team to, and I'm putting a number on this and I shouldn't, but the Falcons winning 9 games. Desmond Ridder just has to get the Atlanta Falcons to 9 games. In a schedule that is the second easiest in the entire NFL. In a grouping of games, if you look at the schedule, that leave wide open gaps for a guy like Desmond Ridder to rattle off multiple games with a very, very good defense that, at least on paper, every single year. And I know, I get it. It's June. But within a few weeks, we're going to be getting close to training camp. And a few weeks after that, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about our first preseason games. So before we get onto this whole bit about, well, it's early in the year to be talking about that. On paper, every single franchise and their constituents are looking at things and going, we've got the best roster in the NFL, or we have a lot of problems and we need to work on things. And I think the Falcons believe, with the additions and aggressive nature that they have had this offseason and guys that they were just so keen on adding, that they believe that they're going to compete because they have a division that has fallen apart and the second easiest schedule in the NFL, and they want to be aggressive. The data and analytics work in the Falcons' favor to put and field a defense that is very similar to what the Saints have in a 43 or 34 setting, with guys that dominate on the line and don't need a lot of help from the linebackers, and or can have only a few guys create the pressure that creates turnovers, thus allowing the offense to have the ball, run the ball, and begin to burn teams down the field like they've wanted to under a Shanahan-esque system that is more Arthur Smith power run and outside zone or inside and outside zone concepts versus the latter, which was just trying to use RPO or just trying to be a one-dimensional pass run offense. So where the Falcons currently sit as a group right now is, well, right in front of you. A team that, on paper, has made a 180 change and are currently Vegas betting odds second to win the division, right behind the New Orleans Saints, who I believe are being overblown. So sell on the New Orleans Saints, buy on the Atlanta Falcons if you're buying up Vegas odds. Because the Falcons' second easiest schedule in the NFL would say that they most likely come out of that division with enough wins to go to the playoffs, and even as a one and done in the playoffs, get enough experience to say, yeah, we can get there. We need to tweak some things, but we can get there. We need to operate differently, but we can get there. And I think that's important. I think that's heavily important to look at this unbiasedly and say, I don't have any positives for this current viewership to overstate or bring you into some type of narrative that Desmond Ridder is the guy and will be the guy. But film doesn't lie, statistics and analytics don't lie, and trends are part of it. Yes, third round quarterbacks do not have a high rate of success in the NFL. But that's all based on who's their current starting quarterback or what kind of building process they already have, not just the player talent that is added to the roster. It's about who's coaching and what kind of offensive line you have, because the symbiotic relationship between your run game and offensive line is also a symbiotic relationship between your quarterback and their pass blocking from the offensive line. And without the offensive line doing what it needs to do and the system dictating that the offensive line has to do these things at these gauging parameters to be successful for their quarterback or running game, then your team falls apart and there's nothing left of it. It's a mashup. It's just whatever sticks to the wall. So as you guys are listening to this and beginning to tune in or out or whatever it may be because you're like, this guy is just saying what we've heard, here's something you haven't heard. That the additions that the Atlanta Falcons have put together as a whole have created a safe nest, a quality safe nest for a Desmond Ridder to flourish and give him the leash that is required of him when you know you most likely will not have the opportunity in the coming draft, and thus the reason why Calvin Ridley is not even here. If Calvin Ridley had been here and stayed in the A and gotten an opportunity with Desmond Ridder, I think that marriage would have been perfect. It's the type of player that you've needed, that you brought Scotty Miller in to go and do for you, / Mac Hollins, because you need a second wide receiver that has some type of talent when you want to spread the field and put multiple guys out there. So we sit at the precipice, ladies and gentlemen. We sit at the ledge here, at the very top, looking down on all the evidence that we have, the Trey Lance stuff, the movement in the NFL that led the Atlanta Falcons to pull out of the Deshaun Watson grouping, which led to the Matt Ryan discussion and trade, which led to the Atlanta Falcons picking up Marcus Mariota, which led to the Falcons drafting Desmond Ridder. Even with Ridder having first-round discussion, all teams decided to let him drop a full 2 rounds before he was selected and allow Desmond Ridder to get an opportunity even after the Atlanta Falcons went after Lamar Jackson and then pulled out of that one on their own graces, in their own willpower, pulled out of that and said we are no longer interested in that because we wanted to drive the price up of this, and or we are not currently interested in running that style of offense because we have an idea of what Desmond Ridder is, and we're discussing the possibilities of allowing him, if the draft goes a certain way, to be the full-time guy outside of letting Heineke just get those opportunities and then drafting a quarterback in 2024, which is still on the table and still available for you, but you're trying to avoid that. So, all those things being said and done, we're going to head over to twitch.tv/gamingwith_LT Dan. Play some Apex Legends. If you guys have any comments or questions, I'm going to leave it open for the next 5 minutes to anybody who has any questions in the live chat. Please don't be shy. By all means, 110%, throw your questions into the chat. I'd love to be able to chat with you guys, be able to answer some of your questions on the topic at hand, on the debate and discussion that we have just had here on the show today. What are your thoughts on Desmond Ridder? What are your thoughts on the offense? What do you think the Falcons have done right or done wrong during this offseason to create an environment that will help or hinder Desmond Ridder? What are the discussion points that you're currently having with your crews and your peeps out on the streets, at the barbershop, out at the job site, wherever it may be? What are your current thought process and discussion points on those? Got our first question in the chat here, which is best case scenario for this offense. Says, what is the best case scenario for this offense? Says Christopher Sanders. And Mr. Sanders, I think the best case scenario for this offense, specifically and totally speaking, is that the Desmond Ridder situation ends up working well. That the Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot grouping, the marriage that they have, turns out to be two mad geniuses that they knew what they were talking about and knew where they were going, and think that this guy is a true leader, and they're just really surprised that he was able to get there and that they were able to steal this guy. They like what they saw during the camp with Marcus Mariota playing, thus the reason why they even let him play in 2022. And they liked what they saw in Desmond Ridder in those 4 games, and thus the reason why if they could obtain Lamar, they would, but they built everything around the idea and principle that Desmond Ridder's here to stay, and we're building this offense this specific way because we didn't want to build it the other way. That's the reason why they didn't go after somebody more aggressively that is more of a real true like athlete versus a real pocket passer or dual threat quarterback. But absolute best case scenario, Christopher, is that the Atlanta Falcons run game continues to do what it's doing, and that Desmond Ridder makes more tangible throws to his wide receivers or tight ends or running backs, eliminating any concern about accuracy issues or missed opportunities, and kind of quiets down the haters, maybe even winning his first 3 games. That might actually be the ultimate discussion at the end of the day, is how many games can Desmond Ridder and this Falcons defense rattle off until they get their first loss, and then we kind of look at the team as a whole. Will it be their first game? Will it be their second? Will it be their 10th? I'm not sure. But best case scenario, their first maybe 3 games, they rattle off, get victories. Desmond Ridder looks positive in all lights and scenarios there, and you go, we've got something here. and then maybe ends up taking a loss after week 4 or 5, and they go, oh, he's human. It's, these things happen, and we were able to win games and end up going deeper and deeper into our season with confidence that we have things that we still have to fix, but nothing specifically is burning them up, right? That's just my 2 cents on that. Let's see here. Pantera says, record prediction. I say 11-6, but it could be 14 or 6 wins depending on Desmond. I want to state that I don't like doing predictions on records because it's so crazy. But being a 7-9 team, or 8-9, whatever the current records are at this point in time, because we 17 games, something like that. I think it's interesting looking at Desmond Ridder and saying, well, if they rattle off some games and they get some wins, then that means that the end of the schedule, which is a little harder, could end up being a point of contention for Falcons fans, especially if Desmond Ridder and company can get over the hump of a certain amount of wins, say 9 wins, and end up pushing the Falcons into a dangerous territory, which is not only division winning, but even getting a rank 3, rank 2 seed in the NFC. If you talk about that, you talk about the defense's production, then Pantera, I think you're looking at a 9-win team or a 10-win team if all things go well. But if things don't go well, then you're looking at a 7-win team because the defensive additions are going to make a massive difference. So it's hard to be worse unless things are just not gelling. But you're always potentially going to be better with better additions and better players. So we had a set of players back there that were average. Now we have players in particular positions that look like they're going to potentially thrive where they're at because of the style of defense that we're setting up, which is very similar to New Orleans. Well, think of those good New Orleans defenses, and yes, the line did a lot of work, but the DBs were a real part of everything that they did. So it's interesting. I would say 9-8, or 10-7. 11-6 seems difficult to push or to get to a particular point, but that's record predictions anyway, right? Like, even my wife is not going to go and say, how much money are we going to end up making this year? We're going to pray on it, and we're going to lend ourselves to God, and we're going to say we're going to work our hardest, and that's how things are going to end up. And whatever God does for us afterwards is in God's hands. That's it. That's the end. But if you believe in a worldly status or in a company viewership or in a fan viewership status standpoint, then you're going to be either overly optimistic and say he'll let 12 wins, 14 wins, something crazy like that. But then on the opposite, the flip side, the pessimistic group is saying 6 wins. When I can't even see that because of the style of offense and defense that this team has created over just this past 2-3 years. If this team ends up going to the playoffs this year, is there anyone, show of hands, 11 people currently in the chat right now, show of hands, will any of you be disappointed if the Falcons end up winning the division and go to the playoffs and are one and done? Or will you be excited about the future and believe that they can get something done? I'm of the current thought process, and I'm sitting within the group of people that believe that winning games cures everything, and losing in the playoffs does not mean a detriment. It means that you've actually moved forward. You've actually taken steps to create balance within the organization. You've created a grouping or a consistent nature in that grouping of good quality talent and good quality organizational choices, which leads you to winning football games. So when I think of the Atlanta Falcons as a whole and what they can accomplish as a team, I as a fan will be always acceptant and optimistic of where the Falcons are potentially going to go. But if you are an analyst or you're a media member, you're probably more on the ho-hum, wait-and-see, or very pessimistic side because the Falcons didn't go out and make the splash that makes the news lines and or would create immediate upper echelon QB play that supposedly is the difference maker for this Atlanta Falcons team after coming off of 7 or 8 wins over the past 2 years in each year. Just running the ball and having Matt Ryan's stiff, statuesque body and Marcus Mariota's goofy. Hey, you guys! That's the silliness of the Atlanta Falcons organization from the fans' perspective, that it has to be done now. It has to be done. But at the end of the day, the truth is more towards the individual and in the center. All right, guys. Thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate it. Joe Houston, good to see you. Pantera in the Billy. Philip Bonner, Christopher Sanders. Good to see Chris Edwards, Raymond Elder, Rose Stackson, all in the building today. I really appreciate you guys coming through. We'll have another one soon. We'll get to some more discussion and talking points on those things as we get more information, as we get more real focus on the draft for 2024, as well as the lead up to our first couple of games. And you understand as well as I do that if the Falcons want to be successful, they have to continue to grind it out and do what they're already doing. There are no other choices if you are a Falcons fan. There are no other choices for the Atlanta Falcons if you stray off the path and you're too pessimistic or you're too optimistic, if you try to push too heavily to make this work, or you are too scared and you keep everything condensed, you will end up losing games because you're not keeping to the work, the grind. Rise up and stay grounded, y'all. I really appreciate everything that you guys have done for me today. Hit that like button, notification bell. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and make sure that you share this out to your friends and family. Peace, hair grease, rise up and stay grounded to all of y'all. I hope you guys have a blessed day. Lord Jesus, please make sure that every single person that's just listened to this entire program has an absolute blessed day, that not fortunes or physical things, but the spiritual, the emotional, the mental are healed, are changed, are resurfaced, and that those things are strengthened within inside these people that are listening today, and that every single one of these people and every single one of these children of God that you have put on this earth that have done blessed things for their families and for their friends and for the comrades around them, that every single one of them continue to go up in grace and glory with your name and listen to your word for everything that they need to do going forward. In Jesus' name, amen. Peace, hair grease, rise up, stay grounded, y'all, and I will catch you guys later.